Part 14. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 131. Empress Atai pouted, "Don't talk nonsense, even if you are his master, he is still Dagon's son. Speaking of the sky, there is nothing wrong with filial piety to your parents." Zhao Li slapped the table heavily. "Quiet. Quiet." He glared at Empress Atai, took the deed of prostitution in Gu Yunjiao's hand and raised it vigorously. "Is it fun that you take this piece of paper and the red stamp covered by the government? Dr. Xiaogu is really going to sue you. Not only do you want to give her the cotton padded clothes, but you also have to get slapped." Stepmother Atai dared to swear at Gu Yunjiao and Zhao Lijhan, but her face was full of dissatisfaction. Zhao Lijhan said with a headache, "What Dr. Gu said just now is absolutely correct. That's what the law stipulates. You have to be clear, you are not taking Atai's padded jacket, you are taking something from Dr. Gu. Besides, if you sell Atai, it means you have broken your blood relationship. Atai has nothing to do with you anymore. When I wrote the contract, I made it clear to you all, but now I'm messing around again. Dagon, hurry up, let your mother-in-law take off her clothes." Zhao Lijhan didn't intend to talk too much to these people. These village women who don't know a single big character can't understand it at all. Lu Dagon kept his head down and still. Zhao Lijhan shouted, "Dagon, do you want to get a lawsuit?" Lu Dagon shivered with fright, and hurriedly took off his mother-in-law's jacket. Atai's stepmother was still stubborn. Lu Dagon slapped her on the head, and Atai's stepmother was stunned, her mouth flattened in grievance, but she didn't dare to move. Lu Dagon took off the padded jacket from Empress Atai's body. Rokuro wisely stepped forward and took the padded jacket. Lu Dagon's face was ashen. He pulled the woman in a single suit and walked through the crowd. Gu Yunjiao gave Zhao Lijhan a happy smile. "Thank you, Uncle Lijhan." Zhao Lijhan smiled at her kindly, and gave Aunt Sun a wink to ask her to send Gu Yunjiao and Chen Shi out. The people watching are also gone. When she came back, Gu Yunjiao handed the padded jacket to Atai. Artie lowered his head and changed. Gu Yunjiao looked at Atai, pursed her lips, and said slowly, "Atai, let me ask you, your stepmother wants to strip your padded jacket, why do you obediently strip her? Even if you dare not fight her, don't you dare to run. I don't believe you can't run away from her." Atai murmured for a while, although she is not a real mother, but her stepmother is also a mother. The book says that if a ruler wants his ministers to die, his ministers have to die, and if a father wants his son to die, his son has to die. Parents should do whatever they want." "Bah," Gu Yunjiao spat out, "nonsense. No book has these pedantic and stinky bullshit written in it. You haven't read the book for a few days, but you've become an idiot. Master Confucius clearly said that the father is kind and the son is filial. The father is kind first, and then the son is filial. Do you understand?" Zhang Yuzi's suppressed low laughter came from next door. Gu Yunjiao continued to educate Atai, "Your stepmother is very kind to you." Atai shook his head and said sadly, "She was not very good to me. The day after my father got married, she kicked me out of the house." Gu Yunjiao spread her hands, "Since she is not kind, why do you honor her? You remembered it for me. If she wants to rob you again in the future, you should run away, understand?" Artie nodded vigorously. Gu Yunjiao sighed, "Atai, although smart, is too benevolent and righteous. Benevolence and righteousness are advantages and sometimes disadvantages. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth." Author, Jinkui. Chapter 132. Gu Yunjiao narrowed her eyes. "Also, do you understand that after you sell yourself, legally speaking, you will have no parents? You do not need—" "Oh, forget it, I can't tell you. In short, no matter what you want to honor your father in the future, you should ask me first. If I don't allow it, then it won't work, do you understand? Atai continued to nod, and Guyunjiao waved weakly, go, go, go and play with Rokuro. She is heartbroken when she sees Atai. At the same time, Guyunjiao also realized that Atai might only be a pharmacy clerk in his life. He can't be a doctor. He is too soft-hearted, too pedantic, and doesn't know how to be flexible. The doctor has to deal with many patients and has a high emotional intelligence. He can't be the shopkeeper of the pharmacy, he is so soft-hearted, he wants to be the shopkeeper, and when he sees those poor people who can't get the medicine, the pharmacy will be sent out by him. Next door Zhang Yuzi listened to the voice of Atai running out, and suddenly said, "Don't be angry, he is still a child, teach him slowly." Guyunjiao sat down beside the stove and pouted, "I'm not angry, I just hate that iron cannot become steel." Zhang Yuzi hummed, "Everyone has their own destiny, and you are still young, so why worry about others?" Guyunjiao also thought about it. She was only 20 years old, and she was even younger when she arrived here. She has not yet turned 15. She doesn't know what to do with her own life, and she really has no way to worry about other people's lives. The days passed peacefully for a while, and it was 2 months since Zhang Yuzi broke his leg. Guyunjiao checked Zhang Yuzi again today. In order to avoid embarrassment, Guyunjiao touched Zhang Yuzi's leg while talking about her plan. "I want to open a pharmacy in Fukan after the new year." As soon as the words came out, Guyunjiao felt her thighs suddenly tense. She squeezed lightly, motioned Zhang Yuzi to relax, and then said, "If you and your mother are willing, let's go together. There is Yuelu Academy in Fukan. Yuelu Academy is one of the 3 famous academies in the country. The masters there must be of high level. I think it will also help your studies." Zhang Yuzi was actually planning to leave Qingshan village after his legs recovered. Obviously, once his legs recovered, the old man Zhang, the second uncle and the third uncle, and the big family members of the Zhang family would all jump up and hug him. It is not that he is unwilling to repay the kindness of the Zhang family. He is willing to give them financial compensation in the future, but he really does not want to be family with such people. It's just that he didn't want to go so far to the city. Hearing Guyunjiao's words, his heart moved. Whether he is in the county or in the whole of Nanzhou, his reputation is too great, which is not a good thing. When he went to Fukan, few people knew about him, and it was convenient for him to keep a low profile. While feeling the tender touch on his thigh, he said softly, "It's good to be able to go to Fukan to study, but I don't know that my mother is reluctant to leave home." He paused, "Don't mention this first. When I find a chance to tell my mother, I will say that I want to go to Fukan to study." Guyunjiao's hand stopped, and after a long while, she made a soft She understands Zhang Yuzi's good intentions, and Chen's family must be reluctant to leave this family, but as long as it is for Zhang Yuzi's studies, Chen's family will definitely agree to go to Fukan. At this moment, Chen's voice suddenly sounded outside, "What's wrong? Why is Saburo's door closed? Hey, even the windows are closed. Sanlang, Saburo, what are you doing inside?" You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 133. Guyunjiao panicked, as if she had nowhere to put her hands. Zhang Yuzi looked at her slightly flushed face and said solemnly, "Mother, Yunjiao is checking my legs for me." "Oh, you're busy." Chen she agreed, suddenly recalled, "Check the legs. How to check? Whether this bone grows well or not, you have to feel it before you know it. The place where Saburo's leg broke." Chen Shi thought about it, and his heart was full of mixed feelings. He was a little overjoyed, a little embarrassed, and hurriedly left. Gu Yunjiao in the room lowered her head and slapped herself secretly. She didn't have any prospects. When she did the inspection, she had a clear conscience, and she didn't know why she was panicking. She suddenly realized that her hand was still on Zhang Yuzi's leg. The muscles under his hands were tense again. Gu Yunjiao quickly retracted her hand, stood up and said, you will wait. She took the splint and went to the kitchen. The splint was placed on the ground. Gu Yunjiao gestured for a long time, chopped off a small section with an axe, and smoothed some wooden thorns, and then took it back to the room and tied it to Zhang Yuzi again. After tying the splint, Gu Yunjiao told Zhang Yuyi the good news: the bones are not bad. From now on, you can get out of bed and move around properly. By the way, don't worry, wait until I ask Uncle Lu to go to the county to buy a pair of crutches for you before getting out of bed. Hearing that he was finally able to get out of bed and walk around, Zhang Yuzi was so happy that he almost cried. The 2 months of bedridden life are about to drive him crazy. Even if he is on crutches, he is willing to get down and take 2 steps. Gu Yunjiao gave Lu Lang some money and sent him to tell Lu Er about buying a cane. The next afternoon, Lu Er brought the crutches over. With the help of Lu Er and a Tailo Kuro, Zhang Yuzi finally got out of bed. He stumbled a few times on crutches, and soon mastered the profound skill of crutches, and walked out of the room by himself. The air outside seems to be fresher than inside the house. The sky that I haven't seen in a long time is extraordinarily blue. Sitting under the eaves of the main house, Mrs. Joe suddenly saw Zhang Yuzi coming out with a cane, and couldn't help sneering, "Isn't it still lame? It's good to be lame, it saves the old man from regretting every day and saying that he shouldn't split up the family." Zhang Hua saw it in the opposite room and quickly came out. He smiled at Zhang Yuzi first. "Sanlang is finally well? You can come out and walk around." Zhang Yuzi smiled at him gently. "Third uncle, long time no see." Zhang Hua circled around Zhang Yuzi, then slowly paced to Gu Yunjiao's side, lowered his voice and said, "Sanlang's legs are like this? Can they still grow?" Gu Yunjiao sighed deeply, and then shook her head extremely painfully. Zhang Hua immediately understood. It seems that no matter how good Gu Yunjiao's medical skills are, he can't cure Saburo's legs. The corners of his lips turned up uncontrollably, but his tone was particularly heavy. "Oh, what a pity for this child. His mind is similar to the Zhou family. Since the family is separated, Saburo is still lame. In the future, he will rise to prominence, and their family will regret to die." Mr. Zhang also saw it through the window of the upper room, and he was even more relieved. He is the head of the family, and Saburo's leg is not lame, which means a lot to him. In case Saburo gets better, he will definitely be laughed at in the future, and he will lose all the golden dolls he got. It's not just about losing the golden doll. Saburo will definitely be able to become an official if his legs are good. For the Zhang family, it is an improvement in the social level of the entire family. This is an opportunity that is hard to come by in 100 years. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 134. Zhang Yuzi turned around outside with a lame leg, and everyone was relieved. Chen Shi also asked Gu Yunjiao worriedly, but Gu Yunjiao still said the same thing: "It's not good." Chen didn't even ask. Since that day, Zhang Yuzi has been walking outside with a cane every day. Now that the weather is getting colder and colder, he wears a cotton robe and takes the trouble to walk back and forth on the road in front of his house. Many people in the village said that his leg was lame, and people were a little stunned. Zhang Yuzi was walking outside again on crutches that day, and not long after, he saw Gu Mei come out of Zhao's house. She came out and walked straight towards the west of the village. As for Zhang Yuzi, she didn't take it to heart at all, and when she passed by him, she didn't even give the poor cripple a single look. After Gu Mei walked for a while, Zhang Erlang also came out of the house, heading towards the west end of the village. Zhang Yuzi seemed to have seen nothing and was still pacing the road. When the two were far away, he went home and called Atai and whispered something in his ear. After Atai heard this, he ran out quickly. Atai came back when he went to have a cup of tea. He came back and ran to Zhang Yuzi's room, and whispered, "I saw that Erlang went to Yaomi's house in the west of the village. I climbed up to the tree at the back of the house and looked at it. Brother Lokju's daughter-in-law is there too. Yaomi is a man. When he was a child, his mother was afraid that he would not grow up, so he called him by such a nickname. His parents are gone, and he is the only one at home. He idles around in the village all day long, and Zhang Erlang often gets involved with him." When Zhang Yuzi got the news he wanted, he patted Atai's head with satisfaction. "Okay, don't tell anyone about this, it's not a good thing, and you can't tell your lady either. Go." Atai nodded and went out obediently. This is also the reason why Zhang Yuzi called Atai instead of Rokuro to follow Zhang Erlang. Atai is obedient and does what he wants to do. Rokuro is too naughty and can easily cause other troubles. Zhang Yuzi narrowed his eyes. The confirmed thing has finally been confirmed, and the next step is to find a suitable opportunity to reveal the matter through the hands of others. During dinner in the evening, Mrs. Chen said, "Tomorrow, the Sun family will give Hongmei's child a full moon. Do you think we should go to the ceremony?" Gu Yunjiao thought about it for a while. "Go ahead, let Rokuro go for a run, pay 500 yuan as a gift, and have a meal by the way." Rokuro smiled, "Oh, that's great, I can go to dinner again." At noon the next day, Rokuro took Xiao Chuan to dinner. In the afternoon, Hongmei came to Jiang's house with her child. Chen graciously let her sit in the room, and instructed Sanya to pour water. Hongmei smiled at Chen. "Aunt Chen, don't be too busy, I'll leave after a few words. I'm here to invite Yunjiao to dinner. Yunjiao is my savior. Without Yunjiao, I can't stand here today. Aunt Chen, please help me persuade Yunjiao to let her go to dinner tonight anyway." Gu Yunjiao looked a little embarrassed. She is a widow now, and it is not convenient for her to go to a wedding. Hongmei said again, "I don't care, if you don't go, you won't treat me as a friend." She approached Gu Yunjiao and said, "Besides, there is something else I need your help with." Gu Yunjiao could only say, "Sure, then I'll go at night." When it was almost dinner time, Gu Yunjiao went to Sun's house. A wedding awning was set up in the Sun's yard, and there were only a few tables of guests left at night, all of whom were relatives of the Sun's family. After Gu Yunjiao finished eating, Hongmei came over and dragged her to the inner courtyard. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 135. Hongmei took Gu Yunjiao to Urjin's yard and dragged her into a room. There was a girl in a satin dress in the room, sitting in front of the window with her cheeks dragged in a daze. There is also a maid doing needlework under the lamp. Seeing the person coming, the maid quickly put down her work and got up, and the girl who was in a daze by the window also turned her head. The maid saluted and hurriedly poured the tea. Hongmei pulled Gu Yunjiao and smiled and said to the girl, "This is what I told you, the little Dr. Gu who saved my life." The girl got up and looked at Gu Yunjiao and smiled, "Yeah, it's really small." Hongmei pointed at the girl again and said, "This is my cousin Kinglin, who came from the county town to have a drink. She wants to stay with me for a few days." Gu Yunjiao smiled at her, "Hello, Sister Kinglin." Qinglan reached out and touched Gu Yunjiao's face, "You look so good looking. You are so young, can you really see a doctor?" Gu Yunjiao just smiled. After a few words of gossip, Hongmei excused herself and left. The maid stood up and closed the door. Qinglan pulled Gu Yunjiao to the couch and sat down. She seemed to have something unspeakable, and her expression was always hesitant. After a long while, she bit her lip and whispered in Gu Yunjiao's ear, "I have a best friend, and I'm going to get married soon. But she has a problem. Her feet are prone to sweating, and there is also a smell. Ching Ian's face flushed red when she said that. Gu Yunjiao understood, this is the series I Have a Friend. Ching Lan continued, she is worried that after she gets married, her husband will dislike her. I wonder if Dr. Gu has any way to cure this problem for her. Gu Yunjiao thought for a while, it's simple, you don't need to take the pills, you have a pen and paper here, I'll make a recipe for your girlfriend. Kinglan hurriedly motioned her maid to find Hung Mei to get a pen and paper. After a while, the maid came over with pen, ink, and paper. As Gu Yunjiao studied ink, she thought slowly. When the ink is polished, the recipe is also available. After prescribing the prescription, Gu Yunjiao said, this disease is not easy to root out. It is a physical problem. However, as long as you pay attention, there will be no odor in normal times. She pointed to Fang Zi and said, I picked up this medicine, boiled it out, and poured it into a basin to soak my feet. Soak once every 3 days, 3 or 5 times, and it will be better for a month or 2. If it recurs later, it's good to pick up medicine and soak your feet. She thought for a while, if you think this is too complicated, there is another simple one. Going to the wild to find cockleburs, or buying them from a pharmacy, also boiled water and soaked your feet. Wait until next spring, after the cocklebur grows, pick its leaves and put them in the shoes, even in summer, the feet will not be stinky. Ching Lan was very happy with these 2 methods. Because she is a woman, she has this problem again, and she has always been too shy to ask a doctor to see her. If she hadn't heard cousin Hung Mei say that Dr. Gu is very good at medicine, and she is also a woman, she would not have dared to ask her cousin to recommend her. Ching Lan gave Gu Yunjiao a blessing, I thank my sister for my close friend. Gu Yunjiao smiled, no thanks. Sister Kinglan, I'll say goodbye first. Ching Lan quickly gave the maid a wink. The maid came over with a coin or 2 and stuffed it into Gu Yunjiao's hands, this is the consultation fee for our young lady's best friend. I also hope that Dr. Gu's. Gu Yunjiao saw what the maid was talking about, so she simply said for her, don't worry, girl, we are all daughter's family, so naturally we won't talk about these things outside. Besides, I am a doctor, and I will keep the patient's condition a secret. Ching Lan was completely relieved and asked the maid to send Gu Yunjiao out. When the 2 of them arrived at the front yard, they saw that the banquet had all been dispersed. Hung Mei came over and said hurriedly, Xiao Dr. Gu, it's getting dark, I'll call Ajin to take you back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 136. As soon as Gu Yunjiao heard Ajin, she knew that it was Hung Mei's younger brother-in-law, Sun Jin. She suddenly remembered what Chen Shi said to Zhang Yuzi that day. She estimated that Hung Mei was matching her with Sun Jin, and quickly declined, no, it's not too far, it's coming soon. Besides, it's in the village, not outside. Hung Mei also wanted to sell her brother-in-law, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll let Ajin take you. Gu Yunjiao said resolutely, Sister Hung Mei, forget it. After all, my identity is seen and I want to gossip. Hung Mei couldn't say anything else, she sighed regretfully and sent Gu Yunjiao to the gate. Sun's house is not too far from Jiang's house, it only takes 10 minutes to walk there. It was already dark, and she could barely see the road. The country road was bumpy, and Gu Yunjiao walked with 1 foot high and 1 foot low. As I was walking, I saw a light swaying slightly in front of me, like a lantern. It's just a bit far away, so I can't see clearly. At this moment, Gu Yunjiao suddenly heard a movement on the side of the road. She turned her head to look vigilantly, and suddenly saw a figure jumping out of the grass and pounced towards her. Gu Yunjiao hurriedly reached out to touch her arms. Just when she touched the cold and hard thing in her arms, a palm wind hit the back of her neck. Gu Yunjiao tried her best to stretch forward, trying to avoid this. She knew that the back of the neck was a very fragile part, and if it was hit hard, people would faint. She knew she must not faint. Dizzy, she's done. Even though Gu Yunjiao tried her best to move forward to avoid her, the slap still slashed on the back of her neck. Gu Yunjiao stumbled and fell to the ground. At this moment, a voice came from the darkness, "Did you do her here, or go to my place?" Zhang Erlang glanced at the lantern moving in the distance. "Don't go to your place, don't stain that place." That was where he and Gu Mei had a tryst. "Not here, damn it, it's too cold." He thought for a while, "Just in the temple at the entrance of the village." In a moment, "You remember to call more people to come and see." Yaomi Izzy agreed, "No problem, I'll do things, don't you worry." He glanced in the distance, "Someone is coming." Zhang Erlang bent over and turned over Gu Yunjiao, who fell to the ground, and carried it on his shoulders. Gu Yunjiao seemed to have completely lost consciousness. Her legs were being held by Zhang Erlang, her head and hands were hanging behind Zhang Erlang's back, drooping softly. Zhang Erlang walked in the opposite direction of the lantern, and just started to walk, when a sudden sharp pain occurred in his back. He couldn't help groaning, and his steps staggered. Gu Yunjiao was pretending to be stunned, just waiting to find the right opportunity to give Zhang Erlang a fatal blow. She wanted to wait any longer, but when she heard Zhang Erlang was going to take her to the temple, she didn't want to wait any longer. The padded coat was a bit thick, and Gu Yunjiao used all her strength to stab the dagger into it. The tip of the knife stirred and was pulled out, and then Gu Yunjiao stabbed Zhang Erlang's neck with force. Zhang Erlang was in pain and threw Gu Yunjiao to the ground with his backhand. The weightless dizziness made Gu Yunjiao scream. Then she fell to the ground, and her internal organs seemed to be slapped hard. Following this scream, the lantern not far away swayed, and then came a hurried voice, "Is it Yun Xiao?" Sister Yao trembled when she heard her voice. "Erlang, what should I do now? Someone is here. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth." Author, Jinkui. Chapter 137. Zhang Erlang didn't care about answering Sister Yao at the moment. He reached out and touched the back of his neck, which was wet and sticky. "Little Biozi. You are courting death." Zhang Erlang raised his foot and kicked to the ground. Gu Yunjiao watched a big foot step towards her, and rolled to the side despite the pain all over her body. Not far away, Zhang Yuzi heard Zhang Erlang's voice and shouted, "Zhang Erlang, how dare you!" Zhang Yuzi was about to go crazy, and he only hated that he couldn't walk fast with a cane. It was dark for a while and Gu Yunjiao hadn't returned home, so he couldn't sit still at home. After thinking about it, he was still worried, so Atai came out with a lantern to pick up Gu Yunjiao. On second thought, Atai was just a child, and it was useless if he had something to do, so he came with Atai. Who knew that Gu Yunjiao's cry was heard all the way away, followed by Zhang Erlang's scolding. Thinking with his toes, he also knew what Zhang Erlang was doing. At this time, Atai shoved the lantern into Zhang Yuzi's hand and ran forward quickly. Zhang Erlang stepped on the air with one foot and staggered forward. He should have stabilized his body easily, but suddenly he didn't know what to do. His legs suddenly looked like noodles, and he couldn't raise any strength. He fell to the ground involuntarily. When the younger sister saw this, she hurried to help him. Who knew that Zhang Erlang was like a weight, and fell straight on him. The thin young girl couldn't hold it, and was brought to the ground by Zhang Erlang. He got up by himself and went to pull Zhang Erlang again, who knew he couldn't pull it. Sister Yao said in surprise, "Erlang, what are you doing?" Zhang Erlang lay on the ground, beating in his heart, "I don't know what's wrong, I'm so tired, I can't even stand up. At this moment, Atai ran over while shouting miss. When the younger sister saw it, there was a lantern behind it, which was getting closer and closer. It seems that Atai is not alone. He ignored Zhang Erlang on the ground and ran away. Atai ran over and helped Gu Yunjiao on the ground. Miss, how are you? Just as he was talking, Zhang Yuzi came over with a lantern. He threw the lantern, raised his cane and knocked on Zhang Erlang on the ground without thinking. Zhang Erlang instinctively wanted to dodge, but he was horrified to find that not only was his legs weak, he couldn't even lift his hands now. He wanted to ask what Gu Yunjiao had done to him. He opened his mouth with great effort, but only made a vague syllable. His tongue also started to go numb. Gu Yunjiao tidied up her clothes, walked to Zhang Erlang, and said coldly, I'll come. Zhang Yuzi stopped his hand and moved out of the way. Gu Yunjiao squatted down with a dagger. She motioned for Atai to undo Zhang Erlang's jacket, and then stabbed it with a knife. The first knife was stabbed in the shoulder. After the knife was stabbed in, it was stirred a few times in it, and then slowly pulled out. Zhang Erlang was terrified. He watched helplessly as the knife fell, but he couldn't even make a sound of shouting. What's even more strange is that he can clearly feel the knife piercing into the flesh, but he can't feel the pain. He saw Gu Yunjiao's expressionless face, looking at him with the same gaze that a butcher looks at the meat on the chopping board, and then picked a place to start. The second knife, the third knife then fell. Zhang Erlang still didn't feel pain, just cold and sleepy. His eyelids drooped uncontrollably. Even consciousness gradually became blurred. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 138. Gu Yunjiao picked up the place and stabbed more than a dozen times seriously, and the anger in her heart dissipated a little. She wiped the dagger on Zhang Erlang's clothes, wiped off the blood, and put it in her arms again. At this time, Zhang Yuzi said softly, It's cold outside, let's go back. Gu Yunjiao hummed softly. Atai walked in front with the lantern, Gu Yunjiao and Zhang Yu walked behind, and the three of them gradually walked away. And Zhang Erlang on the ground was completely unconscious, lying there like a dead man. Gu Yunjiao went home and washed water from the kitchen, then went back to her room. Zhang Yuzi sat in the room with a heavy face. A strong feeling of regret was about to overwhelm him. He discovered the adultery between Zhang Erlang and Gu Mei. He could have used the Zhao family's hands to clean them up long ago, but he was worried that Gu Mei was Yunjiao's sister. He was afraid that Gu Yunjiao would find out and blame him in the future and didn't start. Furthermore, he hadn't thought of a good way to get rid of himself completely. Who knew that the momentary hesitation almost hurt Yunjiao? Zhang Yuzi opened the window a little and sneered at the opposite side. This time, he would not wait any longer. Even if he exposed himself, he would not hesitate. I don't know how long it took. The door of the yard outside was slapped with a sound of mountains, accompanied by a voice, Second Uncle Zhang, Erlang has an accident, come out and take a look. Zhang Yuzi looked out from the crack of the window, and Zhang Rong came out from the opposite side and opened the door. After a while, Sister Yao came in with Zhang Erlang on her back. Mrs. Yang also ran out of the room. She saw Zhang Erlang with her head drooping on her back, and she started screaming before she could see anything clearly. Noisy, you, Zhang Rong scolded, and Yang's screaming stopped abruptly. Zhang Yuzi quietly closed the window when he saw several people bring Zhang Erlang into the house. He has been watching the movement outside. If Zhang Erlang doesn't come back after a while, he will find a way to remind the other side. Zhang Erlang can't die now, and Yunjiao can't get a lawsuit because of such a beast. The old man who was in the room also came out when he heard the movement. In the middle of the night, when he heard Yaomei shouting like this, his heart was beating fast. Several grandchildren had accidents one after another, and if there was another one, he didn't know if he could bear it. Mr. Zhang staggered a bit when he went down the steps, and then walked quickly to the west wing. When I entered, I heard Zhang Rong asking Sister Yao, "What's wrong with Erlang?" Yao Mi's eyes flashed, "I don't know, I passed by the road and saw Erlang lying on the ground unable to move, so I carried him back." "You want to know what's going on? Ask him himself." Everyone looked at Zhang Erlang. At this moment, Zhang Erlang's eyes were swollen into a line, the corner of his mouth was broken, and there were several black spots on his face, which looked very scary. Yang Shi howled, "My Erlang, which black-hearted murderer made this happen?" Zhang Erlang opened his eyes in a daze when he heard the howling. The whole family gathered around and shouted in surprise, "Erlang! Jiro, are you okay?" Zhang Erlang tried to raise his arm, but his arm was raised slowly. He tried to move his mouth again, I'm cold." He bled a lot and slept in the cold wind for almost an hour. Yang hurriedly tore off the quilt and covered Zhang Erlang. Zhang Erlang struggled again and said, "Go to the doctor, I'm completely injured." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 139. When Gu Yunjiao tied Zhang Erlang, she thoughtfully took off his padded jacket and tied it up, and the younger sister helped him get dressed before coming, so he didn't find any injuries on his body. Hearing his words, Zhang Hua hurriedly took an oil lamp and came over to shine it. Yang Shi lifted the quilt again, and then unbuttoned Zhang Erlang's jacket. Then Yang Shi wailed, "My son." Everyone saw that Zhang Erlang's white coarse cloth tunic had been dyed red with blood. Younger sister was so frightened that she quickly shrank back. He didn't know that Zhang Erlang still had so many injuries. After he ran away, he hid at home for almost an hour before sneaking out again, intending to see the movement. Who knew that when he ran over, he only saw Zhang Erlang lying on the ground. Seeing that Zhang Erlang's clothes were open, he casually helped him put them on, and carried him to Jiang's house. He was afraid that the Zhang family would ask him again, so he quickly took a few steps back, and then slipped away. Old man Zhang called Zhang Hua with trembling lips, "Third, hurry up, go and call Dalin's daughter-in-law to show Erlang." Zhang Hua agreed, and just as he was about to put down the oil lamp in his hand and go out, Zhang Erlang struggled on the bed and said, "Don't call her, she caused all my injuries." "What?" Everyone in the room looked at Zhang Erlang in disbelief. Yang scolded sharply, "Sang Mengxing, my mother is going to chop her up." Mr. Zhang scolded, "Wait." He looked at Zhang Erlang, "Dalin's wife is a little girl, how can she beat you? You're covered in injuries, you can't just stand still and chop her off." Zhang Erlang recalled that feeling of being unable to move was very terrifying. She stabbed me twice before I couldn't move. She must have some medicine on her knife. He said weakly, "Let's not talk about it, just find a doctor for me." Zhang Hua put down the oil lamp and ran out, "I'll go to town and invite Dr. Su to come." Zhang Rong slammed the table, "Gu Yunjiao, this poisonous woman, I will go to her to settle the account." As he spoke, he rushed out. While scolding Morning Gate Star and Poison Woman, Mr. Yang rushed out. Mr. Zhang sat in the room with deep eyes and watched the two rush out without saying anything. Zhang Rong rushed to the opposite side and saw that several doors in the east wing were closed. Zhang Rong kicked the door and roared, "Gu's little watch, get out of here for me. If I don't beat you to death today, I won't be named Zhang." The wooden door was kicked with a bang, and then, the window of the next room suddenly opened, and Zhang Yuzi stuck his head out, "Second uncle, I advise you to stop, if you don't want Erlang to be exiled." Zhang Rong was startled, rushed to Zhang Yuzi's window, and said with a grim expression, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Zhang Yuzi snorted softly, Why did Erlang provoke Yun Xiao? Do you have no idea? He added in his heart, how come he has the face? Then Zhang Yuzi lowered his voice, second uncle, go and read the Dechu law, article 27, those who are strong X will be sentenced to hang. For those who are underachievers, 100 sticks will travel 3,000 miles. Zhang Rong choked, and was about to speak when he heard Zhang Yuzi continue, Erlang, this is the second time. Second uncle doesn't even think about it. With 200 sticks, is he still alive? Zhang Rong's face was sullen, you say strong X means strong X? Who can prove this? Besides, if I don't believe it, that poisonous woman can go to the county to complain without shame. Is she shameless? The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 140. Is there any woman in this world who dares to publicize this kind of thing outside without fear of being drowned by spittle stars? Zhang Rong was actually right in thinking about this, not to mention the ancient times, even in modern times, there are many women who have encountered this kind of thing choose to forbear. Because once the public knows this kind of thing, although some people accuse the perpetrator of the crime, the victim will also become the target of public criticism. Like, why doesn't he do this to others, only to you? It's not a good thing to see her like that. A few years ago, a woman in the county town was raped. The woman was angry and sued at the yamen. The man was sentenced to hang. But after that, the woman's life was not easy. Every day, rotten vegetables, rotten eggs, and broken shoes were thrown at the door of the house. The woman held on hard at first, but then she couldn't hold it any longer, and she was hanged by a rope. Zhang Yuzi actually knew this, so he was also worried that Gu Yunjiao would go to the yamen to stab things out. He said that these were just to scare Zhang Rong. Who knows that Zhang Rong is not a fool? He knows the joints very well and is not afraid at all. At this moment, the door rang suddenly, and Gu Yunjiao came out of the house with a hatchet. She sneered at Zhang Rong and his wife, think I dare not sue the official? Let's try it out and see if I dare. When she finished speaking, Mrs. Yang rushed towards Gu Yunjiao while scolding the slut. The knife in Gu Yunjiao's hand waved towards her without hesitation. She didn't expect that she really dared to use a knife. The knife was right in front of her, but she couldn't hold back her feet and couldn't avoid it. Zhang Rong looked at the situation and pulled her back. Gu Yunjiao put away the knife, stared at Yang Shi, and said word by word, I warn you, keep your mouth clean. Swear again, one day I will poison you. Yang's mouth opened, but she didn't make a sound. The knife almost touched the tip of her nose just now, and the fear made her no longer have the courage to provoke Gu Yunjiao. She also absolutely believed in Gu Yunjiao's ability to be poisonous and dumb. Gu Yunjiao snorted coldly, turned around and entered the room, closing the door. Zhang Rong was angry at the closed door for a long time, but did not dare to continue to provoke Gu Yunjiao, for fear of annoyed her, she really went to sue the official. He whirled away angrily. Yang was even more cowardly, and quickly followed him. When Mr. Yang returned to the house, seeing Zhang Erlang shaking on the bed, he hurriedly went to the kitchen to burn a charcoal basin and brought it over, and put it beside Zhang Erlang's bed. Zhang Hua went for about half an hour and came back with Dr. Su. Dr. Su first asked the Zhang family to take off Zhang Erlang's clothes. When Zhang Erlang's clothes were taken off, everyone in the room felt more and more terrified. At first glance, Zhang Erlang was covered in blood, and it seemed that he was covered in wounds. While cleaning the wound, Dr. Su rambled, it seems that the person who made Erlang's actions is showing mercy. The knife edge is not too deep, and it avoids the key points. It looks scary, that is, it hurts the flesh. Gu Yunjiao did pick the place to start, but she didn't want to be merciful, she didn't want to get into a life lawsuit. After dealing with the wound in front, Zhang Erlang was turned over again. Then everyone saw that there were 2 stab wounds on the back. These 2 stab wounds are the deepest. He moved and oozes blood again. Dr. Su took out the Jinchuang medicine and stopped the bleeding for Zhang Erlang. The severely injured areas on his back and shoulders were covered with gauze. After wrapping it up, Dr. Su put down a bottle of Jinchuang medicine and stretched out 2 fingers, the money for the medicine and the cost of the doctor's visit together, a total of 2 taels.